What's up, adventurers? It's me, the Green Knight. I just came here to thank all of you for making the last few months so awesome. In the last little while, I've seen my channel grow from like 1,000 or 2,000 to almost 22,000 subscribers at the time of viewing, and it just means the whole world to me that you guys are so supportive and have given me a place to come talk about things that I like mythology and pirates and Lord of the Rings. So today, as a special treat, I've decided to compile a bunch of my early Lord of the Rings shorts into one long video and throw in a few little corrections here and there, because they were rough. I was just getting started. I still wasn't sure exactly how my editing style was gonna go, and I wasn't quite as thorough in my research because I didn't expect so many people to come and watch these. A lot of them were just done from memory, but nowadays I like to actually crack the books open and like thoroughly look into shit when I'm making shorts about it. So I went through all my early Lord of the Rings videos and just gathered together all the ones that didn't really get a lot of views because my channel was very small back then. So please sit back and enjoy all the shorts that you might have missed.
Yo, where did Tolkien's wizards come from? In Tolkien's Legendarium, like his mythology, the creator was a god named Eru Ilúvatar, capital G god. And he created the Ainur, which consisted of the Valar, lowercase g gods, and the Maiar, which were like angels. Gandalf and the other wizards were one of these Maiar, and so was Sauron. When Sauron's master Morgoth was defeated and banished, Sauron stepped up to be the new Dark Lord, and the Ainur knew that they had to do something about it. So they sent 5 Maiar as wizards, which they called the Istari. But they didn't send them there to be weapons, they sent them there to be guides. So they all appeared as old, wise men instead of strong, powerful gods. And the 5 Istari were tasked with aiding the free people of Middle-earth in their fight against Sauron. However, the only one to stay true to his task was Olorin, who the hobbits would call Gandalf, meaning Grey Elf, or Mithrandir by the elves. Sauron turned to evil. Radagast got distracted. The blue wizards, the 2 of them disappeared into the east, and we don't know what happened to them. And that's why when Gandalf was killed in Moria, fighting the Balrog, another Maiar spirit, he got to be reincarnated and was given more of his Maiar powers. And that's why when Gandalf the White returns, he is much more like a god than he was like an old wizard. Even the elves knew there was something different about Gandalf when he showed up in Middle-earth. Círdan the shipwright gave him Naya, the Ring of Fire, to aid him in kindling hearts and bringing courage to the free peoples of Middle-earth. And that's where the wizards came from and why Gandalf was the only one who actually did his job.
It took both Merry and Éowyn to defeat the Witch King. See, back in the day, the Witch King of Angmar was waging war on the northern kingdoms of Arnor, so the men there forged magical blades that could hurt him. And it was some of these blades that the hobbits find in the Barrow Downs, barrows being like tombs, after being captured by a Barrow-wight, which is like a ghost, essentially, and then being rescued and freed by Jolly Tom Bombadil. And Merry keeps his Barrow blade all the way until the Battle of Pelennor Fields, where he rode into battle with a rider named Durnhelm. So after the Witch King strikes down King Theoden, he is confronted by Durnhelm. "Begone, foul Dwymmelake, Lord of Carrion, leave the dead in peace." And the Witch King does his whole, "Come not between the Nazgul and his prey," and he threatens death and torture. But Durnhelm says, "Do what thou will, I will hinder it if I may." "Hinder me? Thou fool, no living man may hinder me." Because Glorfindel's prophecy said that he would not fall by the hands of man. So Durnhelm takes off their helmet. "No living man am I. You look upon a woman. Éowyn I am, Éomen's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and kin. Begone, if thee be not deathless. For living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him." And the Witch King doesn't respond, as if he suddenly doubts himself. Now, Sam sees this and starts crawling closer to the Witch King. The fell beast lunged at Éowyn as she blocks with her shield, which splinters and her arm breaks. She then decapitates it, just as she does in the movie. Sam watches her fight, so fair and desperate, and he thought it was unfair that she should die so alone and unaided. And that's what gets me right in the feels. They both showed so much courage in the face of certain death, but at least they were fighting together. Merry stabbed the Nazgul in the back of the knee, and the magic blade severed his invisible flesh and cut his ties to the mortal world. And then Éowyn stabbed him right in the face. Both blades burst asunder as their foe died and let out a scream so loud and terrible that it echoed across Middle-earth, and all the orcs quailed and lost heart. Both Merry and Éowyn collapsed and would need to be healed of the Black Breath by Aragorn later, but that's why. Why didn't Gandalf recognize the One Ring when he saw it? I got this question a lot on one of my last videos, so I figured I would come out here and discuss it. I'm going off script again, sorry guys. So Gandalf knew that Bilbo had a magic ring. However, in the early days of ring making, there were many lesser rings made that were considered lessons in their craft, or like practice rings, and they were very plain, most of them. We don't really know exactly what they looked like, but they were probably very simple, and the One Ring was deceptively plain. It was just a gold ring. A very nice gold ring. They describe it as being perfectly round and the gold never tarnishes, but it was just a gold ring. So Gandalf wanted to make absolutely sure that it was the one. Now, the 19 great rings were beautiful and ornate, and they all had their proper gems, as Tolkien described them. However, we only get real descriptions of 3 of them, which are the Elven rings, and Gandalf knew where those were. Galadriel had Nenya, which was mithril, and it had a diamond, and Elrond had Vilya, which was gold, and it had a sapphire, and Gandalf himself had Narya, which was also gold, and it had a ruby in it. And the rest of the rings would have been instantly recognizable. Most of the dwarf rings were lost, and we all know what happened to the 9 rings, but the One Ring was lost. So Gandalf had to do a lot of research to find out exactly what happened to the One Ring. That's why he went to Minas Tirith and he looked up Isildur's accounts of what traits the One Ring had. And that's when he found that it had the writing on it that could only be told by fire. And then he also had to track down Gollum to find out what happened to his ring and how he found it. So after reading the account of Isildur dying in the River Isen and Gollum finding a ring in the River Isen, he then returned to the Shire. And he didn't know for sure that it was the One Ring until they threw it in the fire and the black speech appeared on the band of the ring. That's what really happened to Saruman at the end of the War of the Ring. Well, the movies get it, kind of right. In the books, Gandalf does leave him stranded in Orthanc after breaking his staff under the guard of Treebeard. The extended edition shows him getting stabbed by Wormtongue and falling from the top of the tower and all that cool shit. But that doesn't happen yet in the books. So after a little while, Treebeard starts to feel bad that Saruman is captive, because Treebeard can't stand to see any living thing held captive for so long. So he lets him go. And Saruman makes his way to the Shire, where he goes by the alias Sharky, and he hires a bunch of bad, wicked men and recruits a bunch of corrupt hobbits to help him cut down a bunch of trees and basically industrialize the Shire, building all these garish buildings and extra mills and stuff like that. So when Frodo and the other hobbits return home, they find all the gardens burned down, all the trees cut down, and a bunch of their friends and family thrown into prison, which they obviously are not very happy about. So Merry takes out this horn that was given to him by Éomer, which is vaguely implied to be magical, and he blows a mighty blast on it, and they rouse the Shire. And Sam runs over to Rosie Cotton's cottage, and they have a little flirty moment. So all the hobbits rise up, and they kick out all the bad men, and they corner Sharky, or Saruman, outside of Bag End. And he starts talking smack. He's like, oh, if you strike me down, my blood will poison the land, and all that kind of shit. And Frodo actually shows him mercy. He says, no, like, let him go, let him leave. Frodo was very kind, and he didn't want to see anybody killed. But Saruman, as we all know, is a bit of a dick, and he starts talking shit to Wormtongue, and Wormtongue finally had enough. And this is when he stabs Saruman to death, and Saruman's body withers and turns into a giant cloud of smoke, which is blown away by the breeze, which is very similar to Sauron's final death throw when his great hand reached out and was blown away by the winds of the Valar. And so the Shire was saved by the 4 heroic hobbits, and that's
Why didn't they just fly the ring into Mordor? For one, the eagles couldn't fly forever, and Gwaihir tells Gandalf as much when he picks him up from Orthanc. He says, dude, you're really heavy, I can't carry you. So Gandalf says, alright, put me down in Rohan, which was relatively close to Isengard. Number 2, Mordor would have still been full of orcs at that time. The only reason it wasn't super full of orcs is because a lot of them were killed at the Battle of Pelennor Fields, and the only reason they won the Battle of Pelennor Fields is because Merry had a barrow blade, which was magical, that he used to sever the Witch King's mortal ties to the earth, and Éowyn ultimately defeated him. And the only reason they convinced the forces of Mordor to leave Mordor is because Aragorn used the Palantir to trick Sauron into thinking that he had the ring. And they only had the Palantir because Pippin convinced the Ents to destroy Isengard. And even if they had got the ring to Mordor, no living thing could willingly destroy it. If you'll remember, Sméagol destroys the ring by accident. And the only reason Sméagol was there was because of the mercy showed to him first by Bilbo, then by Aragorn and Gandalf, then again by the Wood Elves, then again by Frodo, and then finally by Samwise the Brave himself. So everything leading up to the destruction of the ring had to happen exactly the way it happened. Almost like Eru Ilúvatar had a grand design. And Gandalf even hints at that in Moria when he says, I think Sméagol still has some use in this story to good or evil, or whatever exactly he says. So yeah, that's why not fly.
And that's also why all 4 hobbits were necessary in the Fellowship, which was Gandalf's idea. Like and subscribe, guys, and Navae Melanin. Why Gimli's gift from Galadriel was more important than you think. So when the Fellowship is leaving Lothlorien, Galadriel gives them all special gifts, and most of these are something obviously useful. And then she asks Gimli, what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves? And Gimli's like, oh, nothing, like, it's enough to just have seen you, my lady. She's like, no, I insist, what do you want? And he says, well, I would never dare ask for this, but since you insist, I would like just 1 hair from your head, because the golden light of your hair outshines the gold in the mountain as the stars outshine the gems of the mine, which for a dwarf to say is kind of a big deal. Now the elves were like, oh, that's super sweet. So Galadriel asks him, okay, what would you do with it? He says, I would preserve it in imperishable crystal, and it would be an heirloom of my house and a token of friendship between the dwarves and the elves. And so Galadriel gave him not 1, but 3 hairs. And then as they're leaving Lothlorien, this is one of my favorite bits in the Fellowship, Gimli says, I've now taken the gravest wound that I could take. Because he left Rivendell knowing that he could like get stabbed or killed or whatever. But he says to Legolas, the greatest wound is seeing the most beautiful thing on earth and then having to leave.
I have taken my worst wound at this parting, having looked my last upon that which is fairest. Henceforth I will call nothing fair unless it be her gift to me.
And this attitude would continue into the Two Towers, where he would threaten to kill Éomer for even speaking ill of Galadriel. So why were the 3 hairs significant? Well, in the First Age, Galadriel's uncle Fëanor was trying to create the Silmarils, these magical gems that caused a lot of problems for the elves. And he asked her for one of her hairs, and she said no. And he asked 3 times, and she said no 3 times, because she knew that Fëanor was kind of a sketchy dude. So Fëanor ended up making the Silmarils out of the light of the 2 trees of Valinor directly, which were like the sun and the moon before the sun and the moon even existed yet. So when Gimli asked for 1 hair, and he asked so humbly and so sweetly, she gave him 3. And that's Tolkien used his own marriage as inspiration for his greatest love stories. When Tolkien was 16, he met 19-year-old Edith, who was a beautiful woman with long black hair, and they had a fun, flirty relationship, and he would call her his nightingale, because apparently she had a beautiful singing voice. Until Tolkien's guardians found out, and forbade him from marrying or even speaking with her until he was 21 years old. So years went by, and Edith thought that Tolkien had abandoned her, until on his 21st birthday he sent her a letter proclaiming his love and asking her to marry him. So she broke off her engagement with another man, and they got married. And Tolkien used this as inspiration for the story of Beren and Luthien. Beren being a human male, and Luthien being a beautiful black-haired elf woman. And when Beren first saw Luthien, he called her Tanuviel, which means nightingale. Now, Luthien's father wasn't very happy about this, so he told Beren, "You can marry my daughter if you can steal one of the Silmarils from Morgoth's crown." Yeah, basically steal a magical gem from the head of an evil god. But Beren did it, and they had other adventures that I'll talk about another time. And this story is echoed by Arwen and Aragorn. When Aragorn was young, he was sent to live in Rivendell, and while he was there, he saw a beautiful black-haired elf woman, and he remembered the story, and he called out to her, "Tanuviel, Tanuviel." In the movies, Elrond is portrayed as not wanting them to be together, but in the books, he's a little more understanding. He's like, they're gonna get together either way, so he gave Aragorn this ultimatum. He said, "I'm not going to let Arwen marry Joe Blow from Kokomo. You have to become the king of both Gondor and Arnor," which we all know in Return of the King, he becomes the king of Gondor, and he reestablishes the kingdom of Arnor. And then Arwen and Aragorn get married, and everyone is there except Bilbo, who was a little too old to travel at that time. So yeah, that's how Isildur's strength never failed, and he was in fact stronger than most in the face of the ring. So the movies portray Isildur as being instantly corrupted and not wanting to destroy the ring at the cracks of doom. But in the books, during the Battle of the Last Alliance, Gil-galad and Erendil fought with Sauron and defeated him, but they were both killed in the effort, and Erendil died and fell upon Narsil, and when he did, the blade broke underneath him. When Isildur found his father's body, he took the sword and he cut the ring from the body of Sauron. And when he took the ring, the body of Sauron was so hot that the ring permanently burned his hand. That's why he says, "I bear it with a great pain." Now, the only ones who were around to see him do this were Elrond and Círdan the shipwright. And they did counsel him to go up to Mount Doom and throw it in, but he never actually went up there. He said instead, "I take this as weregild for my father and brother," essentially blood money. Now, I will admit at this point, he was proud. He thought that he could take the ring and use it for good. So Isildur went home to Gondor and for 2 years traveled around, making Gondor a better place and trying to bend the ring to his will. And eventually he realized that he could not. And that's when his pride gave in and he said, "I don't have the strength to wield this myself." And he knew he had to take it to Rivendell to get counsel from the wise and leave it with the keepers of the three, which, as we know, are the 3 elves who had their own rings of power. And he also wanted to visit his wife and infant son who were living in Rivendell at the time, the son who would go on to be the ancestor of Aragorn. So he traveled to Rivendell with a host of 200 men, but on the way they were ambushed by a host of 2,000 orcs. The men fought valiantly, but they knew they would be defeated. So Isildur's son told him, "You gotta take the ring and get out of here, because if they capture you, then the ring falls back into evil's hands." And Isildur was like, I know that I have to do that, but I didn't want to do it without you giving me permission, essentially. So he slips the ring on and he jumps into the river Isen and swims away unnoticed. Now, at some point while he's swimming away, the ring betrays him and it slips off his finger. And when he does realize that the ring is no longer with him, he feels a great burden lift off his shoulders. So he steps up out of the water, and the orcs see him and turn him into a human porcupine. But never once was he actually corrupted by the ring, and he was on his way to give it to people who knew how to deal with it.
Sam's gift from Galadriel was a gift of hope, not rope.
So, in the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we see Sam receive a length of elven rope from Galadriel, and he has the audacity to complain about it, which Book Sam would never do. Book Sam loved rope and chastised himself several times for forgetting it on the first length of his journey. So when they jumped in the boats, he found several lengths of this amazing elvish rope, and he praises it, and the elves were like, "Dude, you should have told us that you liked rope. We could have told you how we made it." So instead of receiving rope from Galadriel, Sam receives a small box, and in the box is a bit of dirt and a single seed of the Malorn tree, which are the trees that grow in Lothlorien. They're silver with golden leaves. And again, this doesn't seem like something that would be very useful on the quest. But it was in a certain way, because it represented the hope that he would one day return home and be able to plant the seed in his garden. And that's what Galadriel tells him. But when the hobbits finally do return home, they find the Shire has been scoured by Sharky, or Saruman, and his men. And a lot of the gardens and the trees have been cut down and burned and turned into factories and stuff like that. And that includes the party tree where Bilbo had his birthday. And obviously this was very distressing to all the hobbits. So after they raise the Shire and kick out all the bad men, Sam goes around replanting all the gardens and sprinkling them with dirt from this box, and then he plants the Malorn seed where the party tree used to be, and it grows rapidly. In fact, all the gardens grow rapidly. And the beer that was brewed was called
1420,
and it became synonymous with a really good beer for decades after that. That's proper
1420,
they would say. And many hobbit children were born that year, all of them with beautiful blonde hair. And because of this, Sam was named mayor 7 times in the Shire before he also would retire to the Undying Lands, where his master Frodo and Bilbo and all the elves had gone. But that's why do Sam and the other hobbits seem to call Frodo Mr. Frodo or Master Frodo all the time when he's around the same age as them? Well, this is a misconception perpetuated by the movies, where Elijah Wood was like 19 years old when he played Frodo. However, in the books, on Bilbo's 111th birthday, Frodo is actually turning 33, which is when hobbits come of age. And they didn't actually leave on the quest of the ring until about 17 years later, when Frodo was 50. And he chose that date because it was the same age as Bilbo when Bilbo left on his journey. So when Bilbo disappeared from his birthday party, the other hobbits would have been much younger. Pippin, being the youngest of the hobbits, would have only been around 9 years old, and Sam and Merry would have been around 13 or 14. So that's why they call him Mr. Frodo or Master Frodo, because he's actually a much older man than he appears to be, because he stopped aging at around 30 years old. And they are very fortunate that they actually ended up leaving when they did, because the ring wraiths were literally minutes behind them in some cases. Sam actually overhears his dad, his gaffer, talking to one of the ring wraiths as they're leaving. So they very narrowly made it out, and if they had waited even a little longer, they would have been caught. So maybe he should have left a little earlier than 17 years before, or 17 years after, but they made it out just in time. And that's why Gollum ate babies. Yeah. So after Bilbo stole his precious and went on his whole adventure, it took Gollum a little while to work up the courage to leave the caves of the Misty Mountains. But when he did, he began tracing Bilbo's steps, and he journeyed through Mirkwood till he got to Dale. And in the land of Dale, he would skulk around until he learned news of who Bilbo was and where he lived. And that's how he learned the information that Sauron wanted. When Sauron came back to power, he started calling all wicked things to him, and that drew Smeagol to Barad-dûr, where he was captured by orcs and tortured in the dungeons, presumably by Sauron himself. The movies claim he has not yet taken physical form, but in the books, Gollum implies that he has, because he says 4 fingers he has on his great hand, and that is enough. But anyway, while he was in Dale, rumors arose of a ghost that lurked in the shadows and climbed trees to rob nests and through windows to rob cradles, which very heavily implies that Gollum ate babies.